School is back in session. School is back in session, which means protests are back in season. Our friends at Hotspot curated these videos here. First day of class, and Columbia students are already back at it. Here's some scenes from the first day of school.
Boss. Yo.
So they're back. Zero's question, what's going to happen when school's back? Well, classes and protests resume at Columbia and other campuses. So that video was of the Columbia campus and the surrounding streets, but it seems like the protests are back at campuses around the country. Students were lying in the grass at Columbia University on the first day of classes Tuesday, posing for photos with the furry lion mascot in the center of campus and lining up for free cups of lemon and raspberry sorbet. But as people were enjoying the sunshine on the steps of the school's administration building midday, someone splashed red paint onto the school's iconic alma mater sculpture. It dripped down like blood onto her face, over her carved robes, and down the granite steps. Oh my God. Just outside the school's gates on Broadway, one of the few entrances to the Morningside campus that wasn't locked, open only to the people with a school ID and their pre-registered guests, dozens of protesters, some wearing keffiyehs covering all but their eyes, marched to a pulse of heavy drum beats, chanting about the Palestinian territories and ringing bells. They yelled at people not to cross the picket line. We saw some of that on that video. This is the statue that they were mentioning there. Protesters asked students to put aside their excitement for the new school year. While you're learning, Gaza's burning. A line from a leaflet read in all caps. In the months since the Ivy League school erupted into chaos this spring, galvanizing a national protest movement and federal scrutiny, thousands of students, faculty, and alumni and lawmakers have wondered, what next? So far, the answer is more protests, such as those at the University of Michigan and Cornell University last week, that kicked off with the start of fall classes, but were not nearly as intense as those that occurred at the end of last school year. Other schools that faced heated protests in the spring, such as the University of Southern California, have, like Columbia, also tightened security. USC's 24/7 secured perimeter will be in place for the foreseeable future, according to a recent announcement. Some Columbia students said they think peace and trust on campus will depend on whether police are called to disband protests, and wondered whether protesters are strategizing ways to cause enough disruption to attract attention to their cause. They disagreed on the extent of the disruption, with some students saying they found the current protest intimidating, some applauding it, and others saying it didn't interrupt classes or events on the school's lawn. The university's interim president, who welcomed them to the new academic year, helped serve ice cream Tuesday afternoon. Several students said they were more annoyed by security restrictions that delayed them getting to class than the protests. Yes, we'll talk about that in a moment. A spokesman for the city police confirmed a small number of arrests were made, but said he did not yet have a final tally. Next week could bring another wave of protests. The National Students for Justice in Palestine, the SJP, have called for a day of action on September 12th. Elizabeth Howell-Egan, a third-year law student who is the USC SJP spokesperson, said protesters are steadfast and tension is still in the air because last school year ended on such a bad note. USC, she said, wants people to be civically engaged and be involved in the democratic process, but again, only when it's not disruptive, only when it's approved. At UCLA, which saw some of the most intense protests this spring, Adam Tafili, a Lebanese junior and UCLA's new student body president, the first Arab and international student in the position, said he is very pro-Palestinian, but his role is to represent everyone. Columbia was the first domino, but other campuses now realize how unique we are, he said. Change here will look different than change elsewhere. As workers hosed paint off the alma mater sculpture, then vacuumed up the mess, Alexandra Rapp questioned why there were so many security officers stationed around. I wanted to be hopeful, she said. At her college last year, she documented protests as a photographer. On Tuesday, she was disappointed by the difficulty getting in. The line to get into campus was insane, she said. I didn't really love that energy. Yeah, one of the things that is going to maybe zap the protests this year and also depopularize them, which is something that you have to be concerned about, because obviously full applause to these kids who just got right back out there and picked up where they left off, is the security. You mentioned, Russell, this definitely stuck in my mind as I was putting this piece together. You mentioned you live right near the City College campus, which put up fencing and, security perimeters during the protest. Those have not come down. In fact, that campus is not passable. I know the City College campus. I have a couple friends who went there. It's a beautiful campus, great place to just walk around for an afternoon. You can't do that anymore. It's now a police zone. And so that's going to affect the protest too. Just the presence of security, both in terms of security personnel and security infrastructure, making these campuses ultimately less pleasant spaces to be for students and for people who live in the area. I know people would walk through City College all the time. It's a beautiful place to take a walk. Now you can't do it, right? They're turning it into a police state because of these protests.
Yeah, City College, because it's really right off St. Nicholas Park, functions as an extension of St. Nicholas Park, or it did. So if you took a walk through St. Nicholas Park, you could just take a walk through the campus, another kind of nice green space. And now it's all fenced. All these universities are green zones now. You can't go in them without a student or a faculty ID. How much of a chilling effect is that going to have? They had this protest outside the gates, instead of inside the campus. So you could wind up seeing that. It's too soon to say. I would be more concerned about what NYU is doing, and I think that could be the beginning of a trend where they have changed their campus policies to define, quote, certain types of anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism.
Right. Yes. And
they could make rule changes like that to just start expelling people.
Yeah. I mean, they could do that because now they've had an off session to sort of prepare. Okay, what are we going to do about this now? Right. That's something that, you really have to think about moving forward. Okay. This is not something that has caught them by surprise, because don't forget, you don't get that big a break between the fall and the spring semester. That's 3 weeks, right? Now, a lot of these administrations now are different, right? I mean, Columbia, you have a new president, so it's a question mark, how they will deal with that. But one thing that's not a question mark is that they're anticipating protests now, and they have beefed up security on these campuses now. And that is not just a way to physically suppress the protest, but it is a way to demoralize students against protesting. And it's a way to sort of turn public opinion against the protest too, because now, look, you're making life less pleasant on campus and around campus, especially in these urban campuses, which are very much integrated into the surrounding neighborhood. I mean, Columbia is a staple of Morningside Heights, right? So if you're going to make it a less pleasant place to live, that's a way of sort of trying to turn public opinion against these protest movements. Now, the irony is, if you force it outside the gates of campus, now you're forcing it into the neighborhood.
You're forcing it into the streets.
Right? So it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Well, maybe you also push a conversation about elite overproduction and the fact that these colleges are charging exorbitant amounts of money for no good reason at all.
Well, yeah,
maybe more of them decide they don't want to go to these schools. We covered this, I think, on Jimmy's show, how a lot of Gen Z are instead of learning to code, they're learning to weld.
Right.
If you really want a job, hey, anyone from a working class background already knew this. A lot of blue collar jobs pay a lot better than most white collar jobs. Most white collar jobs, they don't pay that well. Like, most white collar jobs, like middle management, working in offices, like, most of them are not doctors and lawyers. And even not all lawyers make the kind of money you think lawyers make. That's a certain cadre of lawyers in certain areas of law that make crazy bank. If you're a really experienced welder, you're making some serious fucking money. Electricians kill. Carpenters, they kill. Like, unless you have a passion, which most people don't. They go to school and they think, oh, if I go into IT, I'm going to make money. It's not that they have a passion for IT. If that's really what it's about for you, you might as well go become an electrician, one of these jobs. You're going to have more freedom and you're going to make just as much, if not probably more money, if that's really what's driving you.
Please clap.